Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. Tonight we have a very special guest, Mr. Lafayette Brown, who will be discussing mental health with us tonight. Let me tell you all a little bit about Mr. Brown. Lafayette Brown is a licensed clinical social worker at the Robley Rex VA Medical Center in Louisville, Kentucky. He is currently the General Caregiver Support Program Coordinator responsible for providing supportive case management, REACH VA training, and is a caregiver health and well-being coach for caregivers of veterans enrolled in the program of General Caregiver Support Services. Mr. Brown is a member of the Outreach Task Force representing PGCSS and Caregiver Support Program at the Director's monthly community town hall sessions. Prior to this role, Lafayette served veteran at VHA in the roles of social work case manager for the post 9/11 military to VA case management program and the HUD Bash homeless program as the substance use disorder specialist, providing in-home SUD therapy as well as education and training for community partners serving the veteran homeless population. Mr. Brown is the chair of the Trauma Informed Care Committee at Robley Rex VAMC. Mr. Brown is a trauma informed care leader who provides a TIC series for Robley Rex VAMC employees, including introductory TIC trainings for several specialty programs within the hospital, medical foster home, and contract adult day healthcare program. He is trained and presented on trauma-informed care for community partners. Mr. Brown is currently a doctoral student at the University of Louisville, Raymond K. Kent School of Social Work and Family Science. He is also a therapist in private practice at Season of Sanctuary, LLC. He specializes in trauma, anxiety, substance abuse, and transitional issues. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Mr. Lafayette Brown. Hello, Mr. Brown. How are
Hello, Charles. How are you? I like the sound, the clapping. It was really good.
you? Well, thank you for joining us tonight. And is there anything you'd like to add to your bio that you'd like for our audience to know?
No, I think that kind of wraps it up. I think as you read it, and every time I hear it read, it lets me know that I've done a lot, and so I think that's just internalizing that every time I hear it is something that's interesting. So I think that kind of wraps it up where I'm at.
Okay. So, well, then let's just dive right into this.
Okay.
So, tell our audience, what is it that made you decide that you would do social work and therapy work as your career?
Okay. So a long time ago, many moons ago, I joined the military. And while I was in the military, of course, it's a transition trying to adjust to military life, coming from my background. And so I was introduced to an LCSW at the hospital, just as some kind of maintenance as far as just checking in to see what's going on with you. And I think at that time it was 2000, so some 24 years ago, I was around 22. It was the first time I had met someone who was very, very welcoming. And, at the time I didn't know that was just the way the stance that social workers take. Very empathetic, created a lot of psychological safety for me to kind of talk about the issues I dealt with prior to the military and while I was in the military. And so I think that meeting with that person really left an impression upon me. And from then on, I kind of bounced around when I was in school trying to figure out if I was going to chase the money, trying to be an accountant or an engineer. I ended up in human service. I ended up in social work. And I literally haven't worked a day in my life. It really feels like the natural place where I should be and the service I should be doing for my fellow man.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. So then this is like a personal thing for you?
Yes, and we learned in school that a lot of times people come to therapy. It's more or less me search. They call it research, but it's really me search. And so, what I've realized in my private practice and the clients that I've had is that they were at some stage or are at some stage that I used to be at. Even with substance abuse, having that history in my family, I found that a lot of the work that I do with others helps me kind of do the work that I needed to do that I didn't know I needed to do as a young man. And so it's definitely a mission of love, I would say that.
Oh, wow. So, can you tell us what inspired you to pursue a career in mental health and entrepreneurship?
So again, it was that social worker that I met. I think entrepreneurship, I thought about what would happen after I ended up working the standard 20 for federal service, and everybody wants to retire after that, right? And so in school, there was a conversation that I had with someone that kind of stuck with me. They said, you would do a great job working with young Black youth. And at the time, I didn't really think about that would be somewhere I would be. Actually, I didn't think that children would be my population at all. I felt like I would just, go out there and start my own private practice and be helping anyone. But what I've come to find out is that it's almost looking in the mirror and helping myself. So I'll have this story I tell people about, whenever we would have trauma in our lives, developmentally, we kind of freeze. So if I had something happen to me when I was 12, when something traumatic happens to me again, I kind of revert back to that age I was at when I had my first main trauma. And so a lot of the work that I do with others, it helps me myself as well, just working through some things that I didn't get a chance to work through. And so my inspiration is always just helping my fellow man. I think that's the greatest service that any of us can provide is being able to help our fellow man.
So, can you, or is it possible that some of that, the personal traumas that you went through, can you actually connect or tie that to some of the patients or clients that you've seen?
Oh yes. So I have an anecdote for you. Um, so again, when I was in the military, I was had like a military marriage, they say, and then the kind of joke is 50% survive and 50% don't. Well, at that time, I, I don't think I was as outspoken as I am now as a young man, and so it was very difficult to kind of get my point across. It was more or less, for lack of a better word, she kind of emotionally kind of controlled the relationship. And what I found with one of my clients in particular is he had a similar relationship, and so when he was explaining to me, how he just kind of let her take and do what she wants to do, and then as long as she's happy, I'm happy, and then not taking care of himself. Well, um, during that process of hearing that story from him, I had moments where I thought back to where I knew what that experience particularly felt like. And so it allowed me then with that client to kind of have a connection where, I think it's important that we take care of the people that we've decided to make this relationship with. And also we need to take care of ourselves as well. And so that's just one anecdote I think about, as well as another one. I have a Black male who's around my age that is one of my clients, and he too kind of struggles with something that I used to struggle with as well, and that's just internalizing sometimes some of the accomplishments that we have. And so our conversations are like, well, you've done this and you've done that. How does that fit into this picture that you have of you not being this person? And so I found that my clients generally are at some stage that I used to be at or I'm currently at. And so that's been the case with every single client that I've had. And so a lot of the work I do with them allows me to help work on myself as well, which is an ongoing process for each and every one of us.
Oh, wow. Now that's enlightening. And that's also, very thought provoking because, when you just think about, from the mental capacity itself and where people are at a particular point in their life. So, with that being said, how is it that you get to the point where you're able to that is do your recommendations for your clients, or you come up with a number of sessions that they have to see you to walk us through a day of what it is to deal with one of your clients?
Okay. So generally my referrals come through either my Meet Monarch profile, which is under Lafayette Brown III, or word of mouth. And so I usually set up a 15-minute call. I call and speak with them, see what's going on with them, make sure there isn't any emergent crisis that require immediate care. And then I usually get like an email and I send out all my paperwork. So once all of that's done, we do the intake. So the intake does a complete history. So I talk about some of those things that I've talked about. Was there any abuse? Is there any SMI in the family, any mental health, any substance abuse? And that's usually one session that I do that with. And then from there, we kind of look at what the client feels like is the thing that brought them into therapy. That's the most important part, I think. I can point out that you had a divorce when you was 8 years old, and you're still holding on to the fact that your father didn't grow up with you. But is what causing you the stress that brought you into therapy? If it's not, then we start where they're at, which is what most social workers do. They start where the client is at, and then we kind of work our way back. What I've found a lot of times is where they're at is utilizing maladaptive coping skills to deal with a problem that wasn't addressed, and it usually tends to kind of connect back to some of those stressors. So if it's something that's really affecting their day-to-day life, then normally sessions are usually once a week. But as they get better with that, they find healthier coping skills. They're able to process that. Then we may drop to once every 2 weeks. Or I have a client now that I told you about earlier about the relationship issue. He's down to once a month. So really just once a month, he needs to check in and say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is how everything's going. And I'm doing good.
Okay, so so then, what happens if you have one of your clients that's like, um, like they're like not having a good day, you know, and they're like they're on the top end, of being on team too much. What do you do to solve that situation?
I think assessing for suicidality is the very first thing. Are they a risk to harm themselves or others? If we can see that they aren't there, and I can kind of gauge clinically that that's not the place that they're at, then we look at well, what is it about the situation? And I usually have them go through what happened that brought them to this area. And if they are on a 10 and it needs immediate assistance, of course we do want to send them to immediate help, whether that be to the hospital, the emergency room, or suicide line, or other community resources. If it's just that their anxiety has spiked and they're having difficulty trying to get that down, then there are other ways that we do that. Maybe some mindfulness, or definitely the answers are within them. So we try to get to the heart of what the issue is. I've always said that it's important that they find ways to kind of deal with issues that are reoccurring, because life will kind of toss the same thing at us. And a lot of times that can, again, connect back to some issues that they have not dealt with. So as long as they aren't in a position where they're going to harm themselves, or I feel like they're a danger to themselves, then we normally just try to dive right into it. Depending on the stage of change. So some people are very ambivalent about what they want to talk about, or what they're willing to change. And so just utilizing some motivational interviewing, just trying to ask some Socratic questions around, well, what can we work on and how is that working for you? They usually bring their answers forward. I definitely try not to impose what I think should go on with someone, because it's just me, and I'm only walking in my skin in this version of life that I have. And what may work best for me may not work best for Charles. Charles may need a different approach.
So, can you tell us, how do you integrate mental health awareness into your entrepreneur endeavors?
So right now, one of my large passions is trauma informed care. And so I usually explain trauma informed care this way. A lot of times, someone will happen. They'll have a behavior or an outburst that isn't equal to the event, and so we tend to think like, what's wrong with that person? Medicine wants to pathologize people. They want to say that because of X, then Y. A lot of times, it doesn't just end there. I think the place we should start is what happened to this person. Again, we find ways to cope with difficult things in our lives based on the way we got responses before. So if I felt unheard as a child and I acted out, then as an adult, that may look like me cussing and hollering at you just because you didn't hear me. Well, then sometimes maybe that person just needs to be heard. Maybe their story needs to be told. And I apologize if my dog is barking. He's a very excitable guy. But Zen is my peace sometimes. So other times not so much. Um, Lost my train of thought with that. Thanks, Zen. But I think trauma informed care is the thing that I use to kind of instill in my entrepreneurship. So I definitely always want to get to the heart of what's going on now, and give people that space where they can be heard. Because when people are heard, when people feel understood, when I can look at you and say, you know what, I think he understands me, that creates the psychological safety that I was talking about. And it's in this area, in this place of safety, right, which has to be renewed before you can do any work. Then we can begin to work on the things that we need to work on. But you have to feel safe. And so, even in my entrepreneurship, as far as the clients that I work with, I try to create that from that 15-minute call. And that's what that 15 minutes call. I'm not charging anyone for that. I just want you to know I want to listen to what your story is. And that's a good lead into therapy, because therapy can go to places that require some sensitive work, some hard stories to relive. And so I want you to know that it's safe. And so when I think about that, even in business, I try to make sure that anyone I'm working with feels safe, feels connected, feels like this is a place where they can get the things that they need and the issues that they have met.
Okay. So, can you tell us this? When you have, when someone actually wants to call you up and they want to do a consultation, or just in general, when you're just about and you see some of your everyday people, how do you determine, or do you tell them, you might want to come and seek counseling or do therapy and things of that nature? Have you ever done that, or does that happen sometimes?
Mm. So, interestingly enough, I do find myself, before I wasn't a social worker, in these positions where people would confide in me about what's going on. Um, that's part of the reason that kind of led me to this, because, you know, pe- I guess people feel comfortable when you are giving them the attention that they need. If I do meet someone and I feel like therapy is something that they need, I try not to force that upon them. I will ask questions like, "Well, have you ever spoken with anyone about that?" And I think that in doing so, it allows them to come up with the answers. Again, no one wants to be kind of told what they should do. I have cards and stuff. If you can't find a therapist, would you be interested in? And so it's always creating an environment where they feel empowered that they are making the decision, right? And they think that's the most important thing that any of us can do as therapists, is to empower our clients to find those answers within them and make those choices. Now, I might not be the best person for everyone, and that's fine. There are enough professionals out here that we all can go get help, and we can find the people that we want to talk to. Sometimes they may want a female therapist, but broaching that conversation with them, asking them what work have you done around it, is usually the way I tend to kind of get people to kind of look at, "Well, I haven't spoken with anyone about this. This is the first time I've shared it. Maybe I should." And then, of course, it's up to them to provide that activation energy to go out there and get those things done, and meet those people that they want to meet, that they feel would best suit them.
So, just a little short story here. When I before I went to grad school, I used to think about going into the counseling psychiatry area.
Mhm.
And so, I had this choice about, am I going to just expand what I do in business and just do an MBA, or am I going to do, the counseling psychiatry arena? Man, I thought so long and hard about that, and I went through and I just looked at all the things that you guys have to do, and I said, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that because you know I'm like I'm not gonna say I'm an emotional person, but I hate to see people in pain,
Mm.
and so it's like to see something like that. It does something to you, especially when you got somebody that's really, really, really
Yeah.
scarred. And so, if you've come across a situation like that, how did you handle it?
So I will tell you authentically when I first began as a social worker after getting after graduating, not too well. I think that I hit the ground like any newly branded social worker, like I'm going to save the world, and so I wanted to kind of make sure that that was the substance abuse position. So I wanted to make sure that you got into therapy. I wanted to make sure that you went to your AA and A meetings. I wanted to make sure that you were taking your naltrexone if you were taking it to kind of make sure that you weren't drinking. And what happened to me was I hit the wall. And so I had a number of clients who were unable to fight the addiction and defeat it and ended up costing them their lives. They succumbed to their addiction. And it took a heavy, heavy toll on me. And I think at that point, I thought I realized what I was doing was right. And I'd met some of them just before these tragic events happened. And the conclusion I come to after burning out and talking with the supervisor is that I don't do anything to people. If that makes sense. So the analogy I like to give people is we are in the car. I'm on the passenger seat. You are driving, right? If you choose to do 100 miles an hour, it's my job to say, the sign says 55 mile speed limit. You know, can you help me understand why you feel like you need to go to 100 miles an hour? And so by doing so, by taking the authority away from me and saying I have to change these people and saying that I will be present and I will witness the change that you want to have in your life, it really helped me through that. But it was a very, very tough time. I do remember there was a gentleman that was a little bit older than me, a black male, who had succumbed to alcoholism. And, his story was he was very professional before it took over his life. And, we kind of bumped heads because I think that, and he saw in me as a young man where he used to be. And that was very difficult. So that caused some friction in the therapeutic relationship. And I never gave up on him because I felt like, I had an uncle who was who suffered with alcoholism and suffered with other addictions. And so I could never help him. I knew what was going on with him. I could never help him. I'm going to help this guy. And so I think the best thing that any of us can do, and if you are in a position where you can help people, is realize that we don't do the work. We witness and facilitate the work being done. And so there was a lot to go through. They didn't teach me that in school, of course. That's not in theory, that's in practice. And so, had you become a therapist, I think you would have realized that at some point because it goes home with you if you allow it to go home with you, Charles. It will. It will follow you home and it will affect your life. And so, you have to have healthy boundaries, not pushing people aside, but definitely saying that I've done what I can do. The ball is in this person's court, and it is always is. It's always in their court.
So, how are you able to separate that personal and work relationship?
So the good thing that I found in schools, I used to listen to a lot of classical music. I used to listen to motivational talks. I have to have this separation time where usually when I'm driving home from work is a great time for me. I put on something that doesn't allow me to think about what's going on, and I just kind of focus on the road. I've found as a veteran, I used to use driving a lot of times when I was dealing with just my own trauma. Like I got to get out of here, so I'm going to drive. I'm going to move somewhere, and so that's been helpful for me. My dog Zen is he's my best friend. So if anytime I have, like, even now, a tough client, and I'm thinking about some of that, he'll jump on my lap and lick me all in the face, and that'll definitely bring me back. And that'll definitely bring me back to, hold on, man. Just a couple licks now. Don't get all on my nose and stuff. But yeah, I have to have these things that break my attention. And because I went through that stuff again when I was a substance use disorder specialist, I realized that I don't have as much authority and dominion over folks as my degree may want me to believe. I want to believe. It's just a position. Well, at the end of the day, I'm a human across from another human who's suffering. And so I want to be a witness to that. I want to be able to help them get through that. And I have to surrender the authority to make that change to them. And I think that is the toughest thing that any of us can do in the helping profession, is know that we are just witnesses. And so that helps me a lot, because it's very difficult. It's very difficult when you watch someone suffer, and you know the way to fix it, but it's my answer, and that may work for me, but that may not work for them. And then sometimes people don't come out of it at all. And so you have to be okay with that. You have to be all right with someone making a decision that is contrary to their best ability to care for themselves, that's contrary to their best interests.
Wow. So when you think about this, especially with situations like that, because I can just imagine. I think I really can't imagine what that's like. Um, have you ever found yourself to be in one of those situations that you they had a little bit more of the intake here in the heart that you should have?
Yes, 100%, 100%. When my first client that I'd worked with passed, I spent weeks thinking about every word I said to that person, every time I interacted with that person. Could I have said this? Could I have said that? If I were trained in this, if I was trained in CBT for SUDS, would I have been better prepared to help that person? Did I say something wrong? How do I make sure this doesn't happen again? And a lot of different things went through my mind. And I will tell you honestly, it had a very, very negative effect on my home life, because I did get a little bit down and depressed behind that, because I felt like I should have done more. I could have done more. And it's a trap that I think a lot of us will fall into, because I don't think any school prepares you for that. And I'm lucky that I had people around me that were able to talk me through it, who themselves were in this field, who had people who they helped and they helped and they helped and they helped, and they were available, and those people still made, choices that were detrimental to themselves. Um, and so I thought I was going to be cold, right? I thought that made me cold, but in actuality, it made me a better clinician, because I
Mhm.
knew my limitation. My
Right.
heart was always in it. I always feel how I feel. I always want to help someone. I'm naturally empathetic, in most cases. Um, and that doesn't change. Just the responsibility for the change. I had to shift that to the client, because they're the ones who make the decisions for their life, good or bad. And so, yeah, for a while I thought, well, I can't just be cold and not really care. And it's not that I'm not caring, it's that I'm caring for myself by saying that this is yours. I'll help you carry it. But at the end of the day, it's your hope. You have to take ownership of it.
Okay. So, for our people that are out there in our audience that are listening right now, what is some advice you may have for them for those that may be slipping into something like a depression, or they're feeling down, or just are tired all the time, and irritable, and all those other things. What are some of the things that they can do to make their lives a little bit better, and to kick that funk before it becomes a real funk?
Well, if you're having fatigue and irritability and all these other physiological symptoms, it's best to talk with your doctor in this process as well to make sure there isn't some underlying medical condition that's leading you to that. As far as if you are in a depression, I would always suggest mental health. But I don't know. I don't think that everyone has the means or to get that. And so there are community health centers out there. There are definitely lines you can call as far as 811 if you're feeling suicidal or anything like that. But the depression itself is a symptom of something deeper that's going on. Most times there's a situation that when we think about our fight, flight, or freeze reaction. So something happens. There's only three things you're going to do. You're going to fight, right? Fight like heck. You're going to freeze and you're not going to do anything. Fight, flight, or you're gonna run from it. A lot of us avoid difficult things. And so I say anything that's suppressed as far as emotions suppressed become physical symptoms. So we can't get away from dealing with the thing that we don't want to deal with. It's just impossible. You're going to deal with it some way. And if you continue to suppress it, or like they told us in the army, suck it up and drive on, those things don't work in the long run. I mean, you'll get momentary alleviation of symptoms, possibly, but what you'll end up doing is adapting some sort of coping skill that's not good for you. And in the military, it was drinking. Everybody was drinking in the military. And, it could be anything. It could be shopping. It could be, it could be being overly promiscuous, right? So you go from person to person because you love that feeling of being loved that you get in the first, like almost like a teenager, like the first part of the relationship. So you're finding the way to cope with it, right? But the way that you're coping with it is maladaptive and it's causing you additional troubles. So
Use that term again. What'd you call it? Maladaptive?
maladaptive coping skills. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah, if it were adaptive, it would be something that will be beneficial to you. So an adaptive coping skill would be I'm going to get out and I'm going to walk when I start feeling down. Well, that's adaptive. It's going to be good for your body. It's going to be good for your health. But maladaptive is I'm going to get me a couple shots of this, or I'm going to have a drink, or I'm going to smoke some weed, or I'm going to do whatever it is. Like those things, they don't fix the problem. They just mask the problem. That's it. So you're just covering, you're getting temporary cessation of thoughts, but we can't stop our thoughts, right? No one can stop what you're thinking. So as soon as you're sober again, in your right mind, those same situations will arise. And so the work has to be with you and digging down to what is that thing that makes you feel this way,
So,
that you are feeling this way about.
oh, look at, I've got things popping on. I
That's
want to,
okay.
please forgive me. Oh Lord, please forgive me for that. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
No. That was it. I was just saying, just make sure that the depression, the irritability, all of those are symptoms. That's what I really want you to gather. Is those are symptoms. The issue is deeper. So we're talking about the picture of the iceberg, where you see the iceberg. Oh, that's a small iceberg over the water, but underneath the water, that's where the issues are. So if you get to those issues underneath, then what you'll find is you'll find some alleviation of some of those other things. Given that it isn't something that's attached to some sort of medical condition, right?
Okay. Well, and I'm sure that what happens, I think, especially from the military perspective, that I know that what happens is, like, if you have a primary care, then they have to do a referral for you guys. But if you're outside of the military, And let's just say, like, you know how you say how you may have come across some of your clients in like just some of the out of ordinary forms.
Hmm.
Like, do you, especially for like your own practice, do you get like a lot of referrals from people from different places, and they refer a lot of clients to you, or do you still have to go out and seek clients in the traditional way?
So I think it's a mixture of both. I do some marketing every once in a while. I might put an ad on Facebook saying that mental health is important. Make sure you reach out. My recent client I just talked to this Sunday who's coming in. His daughter found my information and so referred him. I've had other clients who are friends of clients. I've had people find me online. I've given people my card. When they ask, "Oh, you're a therapist?" "Oh, I have a family member that may need assistance." "Well, here's my card." Have them reach out to me. And so it's really beating the street. It's having a digital footprint, which is which is extra work on top of everything else. But I do think that there are other ways, advertise, having profiles on some of your main. I don't have a I think it's psychology. I don't have a psychology today yet, but I mean that will be another avenue that I will be looking into as the practice continues to grow. So as many places as I can put my face and put out there that mental health is important, and I'm here to provide it if you need it. Would be grateful. Some of the I'm sorry, would be a great ideal. Some of my referrals just became because I'm a black male, and so that's definitely a rarity in the field.
So, can you tell us about that now? Is there is was that like from the community, and do you do a lot of different things in the community where you gather clients, and just because of the reputation, you're starting to get more from the community?
Yeah, so I community wise, the biggest thing I do is a trauma informed care. So I do a lot of trainings on that within the organization that I work, and then outside the organization with other organizations, speaking about mental health and the disparity between BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and persons of color seeking mental health, and our Caucasian counterparts. Just sending information, sharing information. I have gotten clients that way. I'm also a part of a Black Men in Counseling. I think that's the name of it. I could be getting that wrong, on Facebook. And so sometimes we share referrals. And then there is a Louisville Therapy Network Facebook page that I'm a part of. And so sometimes someone will come on there and say, "Hey, I have a 41-year-old Black male looking for this client," and then everyone in that group is a therapist, so we will send our information, and then that person gathering information will give those options to the client. And so there are many different ways I kind of come about clients, especially being a Black male in the field.
Well, you know something? I don't want you to think I'm crazy or anything like that. But I'm gonna tell you something. After the COVID situation, and that there were people that were having a lot of breakdowns, right?
Mm, yes.
I wasn't one of those people, but I will tell you that as time has progressed since that time, not that COVID is gone, but it's just hasn't been as bad as it was when it originally came out.
Mm,
But up to this point today, normally, and this is my normal just way of just thinking and just feeling comfortable, is that I always feel comfortable if I actually found someone in the medical field that looks like me. That
mm,
makes me feel comfortable.
mm.
And have you heard any of that from any of your clients before?
I have. So there is something that's empowering about looking across at the provider and them being of the same ethnic group as you. Now, we may assume that they have had the same experience, and they may not have. But it breeds almost an instant chance for a therapeutic relationship, because you can look at this person and feel that they've had the same experience. Now, I will say, as being a Black male, Not every black man in America has the same experience, but I would almost argue that we've all had some sort of experience that was distasteful or kind of some sort of traumatic event that we had dealing with racism or any other the structural issues that we deal with. And so it's almost like you could look at this person and maybe they've had the same experience. Now that's not always true. And there is definitely um, how can I say this? There's definitely a note of if we think about this is off track, but it's the Willie Lynch letter, right? And this idea of kind of segregating us amongst ourselves. And so there are times when we don't even look at each other and see this could be my brother. This is my brother. You know what I'm saying? So ideally that would be great that was the way it always worked, but I think it's at least a starting point. Hey, if there was a long time ago when I had to so I'm 46, I'm of the age where there has to be a check so that I don't have colon cancer, right? So we'll share that. But when I the first provider I'd found was a black male. Why was that? Because I felt like I could trust his opinion because he's had a similar experience. Now, is that entirely true? No, but I mean, but that gave me the confidence and empowered me to go out there and do something that I needed to do to make sure that my health was taken care of. And so it may be the thing that gets you in the door. It may not be the thing that keeps you in the seat, but it's definitely the thing that gets you in the door. And so I definitely understand that. And there's a shortage of BIPOC providers. And so, if you have a history, or if you have a people who have a history of distrust of the medical system because of all the different things going wrong, you think about the Tuskegee Airmen experiment. You think about a lot of other things where medicine hasn't definitely been one of the things that's been helpful to us. Not to mention, and I'll add this, that there's still this thought process that black people have a higher pain tolerance than most. So yes, 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 100%. I read a research article and they talked about, especially when they did the I can't think of the doctor's name, but he founded gynecology, and so when he was doing his experiments with black women, he never gave them any anesthesia because he felt like that they didn't need it. They can tolerate pain more. So the history, and it's not to bring it up and throw it in people's face, but uh, where we came from matters. What happened matters. So we are now in a different place, but still, those things still happen. And people, especially BIPOC people, may have a distrust of the medical system, and so that leads us to find someone. If I find someone who looks like me, then I can trust this person. Now, is it entirely true? Maybe not, but I mean, it's definitely a function of the history that we had with engaging with medical care.
Oh, wow. What challenges have you faced while balancing your work in mental health and entrepreneurship?
Time is the trouble that I face. um, generally a day for me looks like working 8 hours, 2 or 3 of those hours I may have a client, and then doing some homework, doctoral school. And so that's 5 days, no, that's really 7 days a week because even on the weekends I'm doing homework. And so one of the things that I really wasn't getting a lot of was sleep. And the lower amount of sleep I got, the less my ability to function was. It was definitely affected it. And so just being able to say to myself, today I'm going to do this, like setting boundaries. I even set boundaries with work. Like I've had to kind of take my clients down or at least spread them out more because I still have this schoolwork to do, right? And then I still have a family on top of that, the two young boys that I want to kind of be a part of their lives. So at the same time, I was coaching them in sports. That's gone now. Their season's over with, but tackle season's get ready to start. So how am I going to mold my time in a way that's going to be helpful for me? Because one of the things that you can't get back is time. And so while I want to push ahead with this entrepreneurship and instill that in my sons and have them kind of think of ways that they could be a creator and not just a consumer of goods. I have to realize that it can have a detrimental effect if I do too much. And so I've crashed out. If I'm authentic with you and your audience, I've done too much and I've burned all the way out. I mean, but I had to go through at least that burnout to know where my limits are. And so I'm definitely still struggle with that a little bit, because I really want to maximize my potential within this life. Um, and I have to realize I need that downtime. And so it's been an ongoing struggle. If I'm going to be truthful with you, now I would imagine there's an ongoing struggle for a lot of professionals, just being able to balance that time. But yeah, just being able to say, hey, I need to take this time. So there are times when like I get off. I know there's reading and stuff I have to do. I know there's a paper that's due. I go to sleep. This one day, give yourself a day. Go to sleep. Shut it down. And that's been helpful, because before I'd go all the way up until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and get up at 6 and do it all over again. And so I'm definitely not a spring chicken anymore. So I don't have that level of reserves left in me. So I definitely have found that, it's important because what happens is it shows up in my health wise, you know, stress and anxiety are definitely things that can turn your health south really quickly.
Mr. Brown, I want you to know I am so proud of you for being in a profession that's so in depth, so meticulous, so detailed. We lost Mr. Brown. See if we can get him back. Yes, sir.
Hey, there he is.
Anyway, I'm so proud of you because you cannot well, I'm gonna tell you, you cannot. But I mean, like for doing what you have to do, and how you have to really, really be able to divide up time, where you have both clients and then you have family that you've got to split that time, and you're also going through your doctoral program. I mean, that's what they mean when people say, normally we can tolerate so much pain
Mm,
because when you're able to get more out of yourself, and a lot of people don't know how to dig deep, but also the military experience adds to that as well because you are definitely digging deep because there's no telling what the situation may be because they're always different. But you are a great, great example for those in your field that they need to be learning a lot of things from you. And I think that's what's gonna, in the end, I think not just my audience gonna love the idea of what you're putting out here on this show, but I'm more than sure that there are going to be an enormous amount of people that if they're looking for help, they've got to come looking for you.
well, I appreciate that. I will tell you the military concept or mindset that I had probably led to that burnout. Yeah, because that's like I said, that suck it up and drive on. I would complain, but who would listen? All the things I learned during my formidable years, I've thrown a lot of that out. Now the duty and the honor and country, so I keep some of those things because they're helpful in what I do. But yes, it's been a journey, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't take away any of my mistakes. I wouldn't take away any of the choices that I made that were good because I wouldn't be who I am now. And so, who if you're listening and you're in a place, where you're close to burnout, you're burnt out, you need mental health, take those steps. You know, it's difficult and it's not easy. And I always tell people that, what we're going to do here won't be easy at times, but it's necessary, right? And a lot of times the things that we do that are necessary, i.e., me being an entrepreneur and building something that some sort of legacy I can leave for my sons, is necessary. Especially if I want to change and flip the generational wealth, or at least have them set on the path to where they can be um, creators of their future and not just cogs in the machine. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just going to work and spending their check and living for Fridays and hating Mondays. We find ourselves in those positions because we aren't doing the things that we love that matter
Right.
to us.
Can you share a significant milestone or achievement from your career in mental health and entrepreneurship?
Yes, I have been in business since 2019. And the big milestone is when I started business. So I do all of it. I do other than paying someone to do my credentialing, I just don't have time to talk to all these insurance companies and fill out the pages and pages of packets. I do my billing from front to end. I do all my scheduling. I do all my notes. I do all the meetings with people. So I'm the secretary, the therapist, the biller. And so I'm proud of myself because in 2019, when I started it off, there was a period when I burned out and I just kind of shut down for a couple months. Um, but what I learned from that is that I needed to, again, use my time wisely. And I've been able to kind of pick back up. And I picked back up 2019 I opened. That was about 2020, into 2020 when it got hard. And now I'm back, 3 years going strong. And people are still coming in. And I imagine people will still come in. And so this is going to be my baby when I retire, soft retire. I can continue to help people. I can imagine my days being filled with just talking with folks, because I really do like that Maya Angelou quote that, people kind of remember how you made them feel, right? And so my hope is that people leave my services feeling better than they felt when they came in. And so the milestone is that I'm still here. A lot of businesses shut down in the first 5 years. I made it, and I'm still kicking.
Yes, sir. How do you see mental health awareness intersecting with community development initiatives?
Oh, listen, the need for us to go out there and talk to someone is great. I talked earlier about trauma informed care. So they have this thing called the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences. I was doing some research prior to this, and I found out there's a C ACEs. There was a 2021 article in NIH that talked about the fact that while ACEs talks about these adverse childhood experiences, divorce, any sort of abuse, substance abuse, a lot of other things, they don't talk about the effects that racism has on Black youth for potentially traumatic experiences. And then the places they come from, right? There's a lot more violence, there's drugs, there's broken homes. Like they don't there's not a lot of research from the ACEs community that talks about how those things affect. And so if we're talking about community development, then we have to talk about where we're at as a community, and so as a Black community. And so it's important that we look at those things, and hopefully there's more research. Maybe y'all find myself doing some of that research at some point when I finish my doctoral degree, just get the information out there that um, racism does have an effect on Black youth, a detrimental Black effect on Black youth. One story that I'll tell you really quickly, and I think it's profound because it definitely touched me. Um, when I've had my first Black History Month, when I found out about Martin, Malcolm, all the pillars of Black History Month. I was in Catholic school at the time, so I was one of the few. My parents put me in Catholic school. I was one of the few kids that were Black kids. Um, I remember very vividly when it showed the videos of Black people getting hosed and bit by dogs. How the other kids in class who weren't Black would laugh. And I thought about the examples that they have of successful people, and like all the successful people you see in America, right? Um, these children had those people to look to and say, "Hey, I could do that." I had Martin and Malcolm who were assassinated for their beliefs. And so even me getting here today, even being Dr. Student, was a very, very hard struggle because I had to believe that I deserved it. And there are successful Black people around, but they weren't put in my face as a kid. And so as a community development, if you're out there, we need to be talking to these youth. We need to be showing these youth that there are ways to succeed other than a microphone and a ball that bounces or you can throw. That is the most important things, because at the end of the day, you're 5, 10, 15, 20 years in sports. You have the rest of your life as a 30-something-year-old man. What have you done? And the other thing is, I wish we had more attachment to our culture back from where we came from, because we don't have like a bar mitzvah or an event where we move into manhood per se. And so what you have is a community of perpetually teenage men who are teenagers. There's another
Little
word for
boys. They're little
little
boys.
boys. Yes, that's what you have, right? And I could be 40-something years old, but I never transitioned into manhood, right? I never made those leaps and those bounds, and that includes a lot. So it's going to take us reaching back and knowing that the children my kids' age, 8 and 11, that's where the work can be done. Maybe even younger. That's where the work can be done, so that when they become our age, right, they have that foundation. And that's the most important thing I can think about, because that will help their mental health. Knowing that I can be him on the screen, I can do that. Saying I don't have to hurt another Black male. I don't have to talk bad about Black women or sell drugs or do all these other things that the music kind of pumps into our kids. And there's only so many basketball players and football players, right? We're all not going to be professional, but we can be professional at life. And so that's how I hope mental health can help kids and move our community along.
Now, you said a lot of things there, and I want to do a follow up or two on that last statement. And if you could just tell us, when you think about a lot of these professional athletes that look like
Mhm.
you, and the majority of them, once they supposedly, quote unquote, when they feel like they have become successful, they've done what they've done. Oh, hey, I'm buying the new houses and cars and things of that nature. Why do you feel like there's such a disconnect to coming back to their communities to build them?
Wow. Um, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is, depending on how they came up, it's almost like these crabs in a bucket, right? Everybody's pulling on you. No, everyone doubts your ability to make it out. So when you make it out, unless you had a connection with that community, you're not going to go back, right? You'll go back and help your family, but you won't go back and help the community. And so we tear each other apart, based on ideals that don't originate with us. And I think that individualism that we're taught, really hurts us in the long run. A quick analogy is, I know that there are people who would come here, refugees who would come here, and they would live 5, 10 people in the house, and they would pool their resources, and then they would buy a house. Then they buy another house, and they buy another house. But we don't do that. There'll be 6 of us in the house, and we'll try to get 6 houses and 6 cars and live in 6 different places. But again, if you look back at our history, how things happened that kind of divided us or put us at odds with each other. I mean, there's a lot of healing that we have to do in our community in order for us to kind of make those changes. Now, it's not as bad as it was, but it's not as good as it can get either.
Well, let me tell you, this is how I see that. And so kind of like, I guess you could tell me from a therapeutic perspective, like maybe why I'm thinking this way. I think, I don't think it matters like where they actually came from, because in some shape, form, or fashion, all of us have pretty much come from the same story.
I agree
And
with that.
so if we've all come from the same story, some of us may be a little bit more fortunate than others where we have two parents, vice one.
Hmm.
But still, even in having two parents, the struggle was still the same. And so the thing is you look as I look along my block, where I grew up at, and I see there may be two, maybe three people other than myself that strive. We strove for a little bit more, and we kind of like did a lot of different things. But when we go back, you know, when we go back, we're always visiting the same place, and we always try to think about ways as to what we can do to make this thing right. None of us are none of these celebrities, or star athletes. But it is indicative to how marketing goes that it takes our children and some of these younger folk to go and support those very same people that are not supporting them.
Hmm.
So my thing is the disconnect from the parents, or is the disconnect from is it from the divide and conquer Willie Lynch letter, as they say, from a time back that's still circulating, that still says, well, I don't care about you, I got mine.
Wow, I would say that it could likely be a combination of the two. I mean, our first educators are our parents, and
Hmm.
so they definitely instill in us what we need to survive. Now, I can't give you what I don't have. So if your grandmother didn't give it to you, if your grandmother didn't give it to my father couldn't give it to me.
Hmm.
Um, there's something about sensationalization that it's shiny and it catches people's eyes. And so what I'm talking about doing is not sensational. It's the work. Take care of yourself.
Hmm.
Save money. Go
Hmm.
back and talk to people. Like those aren't things that people are kind of celebrated for. We're celebrated for the big flashy things. And so there's probably so many pieces to it that, I mean, you can pull 20 pieces out, whether it's the income of the household, whether it's nature versus nurture. Where was the neighborhood at? Was the daddy in the household? Were there siblings in the household? Like all these different things kind of combined for this soup. And so I would hope that by going back to our communities as individuals and setting those things up, it's going to be laborious. It's going to be slow work because you or I don't have the reach that we can affect 20,000 people or 100,000 people at once by something we put on TV, right? And so the images that we see, like that marketing has been a negative thing for Black people because how we're perceived, how we're projected isn't always how we are. So there are so many factors that kind of keep us kind of divided. And I'll be honest with you, if there was ever an opportunity for us to figure out a way where we could pool our resources, right? Like almost like a Black Wall Street, right? If you've heard of that. There were times when we were not at the expense of others, but we took care of ourselves, where the dollar circulated in the community. Those kind of ideals are not celebrated, right? And so what you have is two or three households that take care of business, four, five, six, seven, eight others that are kind of the world, if it's the best way I can put it, of the world. And so um, I think we all have to kind of grab our shovels and dig where we're at. That's the best we can do until we have a platform where we can reach everyone at once and we can kind of pool those resources. We should definitely be thinking more about um, how we can save everyone, but meanwhile we're trying to stay above water ourselves.
Now, just so this is for another show, but I will say this. Like the dots are connecting. And I say the dots are connecting because, as you know, I'm here in Georgia, you're in Kentucky. And so that's a dot, and they're connected. And so when they connect and it keeps spreading where you are, it spreads where I am. The people I've connected with out west, Midwest, North, Northeast, Southwest, Southeast. It still matters because the dots are connecting. But what happens is we don't have to broadcast. And you're right, we don't have that reach like those folks with the millions of dollars. But I can guarantee you, as we continue to build on this network, we don't have to put it out until it's time to unleash the tiger. That's the thing.
And
Because
definitely healing our traumas along the way. So I don't want us
exactly.
to get this newfound access and then kind of pity it all away because we haven't healed the things that are going on with us. So that's the importance of, I think, of community development, like you're talking about, and that
Mhm.
mental health piece. Only you know what's going on with you. So work
Right.
on you. Be the best you every day.
Mhm. Well, I sure thank you for that. And so, can you tell us this? In what ways do you leverage entrepreneurship to address mental health disparities in communities?
So it's interesting because I was thinking about that, and I think my work will be this, and I've always felt like I've had a great work inside of me, something coming forward. Um, Ideally, at some point, I can grow my business to a point where I would love to buy some land out in rural and bring some um, kids who have never seen that, especially BIPOC kids out there, and give them a side of life that's not so much based on city. Get away from the electronics, get away from all this stuff, and see a side of life that we don't normally see. I live out in the country now. I grew up in the city. I'll probably never live in another city in my life, only because I like the peace that comes with being able to grow my own food and do stuff like that. So if I were to have the perfect scenario, the perfect storm, then SOS, Season of Sanctuary Farms, I'd have the funding for that, which would allow me to go work with some of these courts that actually are asking for volunteers to work with disadvantaged youth. Maybe have some sort of program in place where those youth can be removed from the cities, removed from the environments where they cannot make better choices because they're right there in the problem. And then some sort of connection with some sort of educational system that would allow me to get schooling out to them, and then hopefully there would be some generous people that can get those kids some scholarships, some funding, maybe even get kids back into trades, being a plumber or being something like that. It's not flashy. You won't get you a Maserati, but you'll own yourself a business. And once you become an entrepreneur, then you write your own check. And so that's ideally where I would want to go. Where I'm at now is, I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm still in school. I'm still working. I'm still trying to work to that place. Um, but that is my vision. That is definitely my goal, to empower a lot of people who have not felt empowered, to make decisions that are better for their life. And so, if we can get there, we won't get there till after I finish my doctoral degree. But definitely once I get there, then and I'm able to kind of work only in my business, I feel like that will be the path that I would go down. Um, yeah, because if I don't provide the example, I can't complain about the fact that what they're doing. So I have to do something. We have to put ourselves in these situations that allow kids to make better decisions.
Could you share a personal story or experience that motivated you to advocate for mental health in your community?
Um, so I can. I'm trying to think. I will share it in a way that hopefully I don't make too many people upset, but I want to be authentic as well. Um,
If it's got patient client confidentiality,
no,
we
no,
can.
it's gonna be a story about me.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't. Yeah, yeah. Um, so there is definitely some aces in my family. were some adverse childhood experiences. And so some of those involve substances, other of those involve abuse. And so, like any sick system, no one in the system really kind of wants to fix the system. We just kind of just sweep it under the rug. And so one of the things that kind of motivated me being a part of that system was to kind of segregate myself from it and get the help that I need. Right. So I can't make people apologize. I can't go back and change the past. But what I can do is process it and what the effects it's having on my life. And it did have an effect on my life, both the abuse and the substance abuse. Um, and then from there, how do I leverage that? Well, I went into substance abuse care, right? I worked with homeless veterans who mostly look like me. There were some from other groups, but worked with them. And in my therapy, while I have people from all ethnic groups, um, I do try to reach out to BIPOC people in particular, if I can find them, if I can, and definitely on, like I said, on the Black people, Black men's and social work page, we definitely do a lot of meetings about how we can kind of pool our resources, right? Men from different states who are in social work, um, but it is a slow grind in that, almost like the starfish story where there's a guy walking down the beach and older man's looking at him, and so the old man throws one starfish in the water, and he's like, "What are you doing, old man? You see this beach, it's starfish everywhere. You can't save them all." And he said, "Well, I saved that one." And so as I work with kids, I've worked with kids before, who've had some behavioral issues based on what school said. Come to find out they had some traumatic past, and that kid, I was able to kind of get them to see it. And so my hope is, again, it's to grow to get to a point where I can take on as many as I can and to help as many as I can at once. Um, yeah, it's slow. It's a slow grind, I think, because my time is so divided. But it's definitely a passion of mine because trauma is at the root of everything that kind of happens to us. I don't know how many times I said that, but I really want your audience to realize that some sort of trauma. 70% of us experience trauma. Veterans at a higher clips than most, and so something has happened, and we have to get to that something that has happened. And racism is something that happened to a whole group of people, and it's not dead, and it's not gone, and it's not over, and it's pervasive in that the systems now have ways of acting that kind of affect us detrimentally.
So, how did that motivate your advocacy?
Hmm. Um, I think I think it pushes me, now that I realize, that that's kind of where my place needs to be. It pushes me to put myself in positions like this. I had a Black Men in Social Work podcast where I talked about this. I talked about the same thing. Um, when I have time, I want to be a CASA volunteer for kids and who have no parental support in the court system. So it definitely guides me to put myself in positions where I can speak for them. One thing that happened, it's a small thing, but there was a child that's a gifted child that was in school and was having trouble with some of the teachers, a BIPOC child. And, they tend to say, well, he's having behavioral issues, right? Well, I think the child was bored. And so it took me going to the principal and bringing him research articles and say, listen, this is what's going on with this kid. And it's something that I'm still working on. I know there are more kids in my area who um, could benefit from some of the things that should be in place, like a place for those gifted kids to kind of have other kids like them. Even though there's a program in place here in Kentucky, it only starts at the fourth grade. So what are we doing till then? You know, and while medication can be definitely something that's needed in some situations, I don't think it's a blanket prescription that you can write to every kid. There are some behavior interventions. There are ways to kind of meet these kids where they're at. And so I find myself talking about this very thing, trauma, and more so now how it's affecting Black kids in a lot of the conversations that I have with people. And so I want to include that in my capstone and for my doctoral degree. I think I got this trauma informed care going with work. We'll see how that works. But everything that I'm doing as far as my career, becoming this doctoral student, will put me in a greater position to speak on trauma informed care. And hopefully it puts me in schools where I can speak on that to teachers about these environments that all kids can come from, no matter what their ethnicity, and how they come to school and how they present. I think the school itself is not built to know those things. They have counselors and stuff. They do their best job, but I don't know if the teachers are there. And it depends on where you're at. I'm in a rural area, so we may be a little bit behind some more progressive places. That's just the way I see it here.
Well, so have you picked a specialty yet for your doctoral program?
So for my capstone, I'm thinking about doing it. I have implemented trauma informed care training, like I said, like you read earlier at my job. Um, and I've been able to kind of do a new employee training on trauma informed care. So the new people coming in, I'm making them trauma aware. I'm trying to make the system itself trauma aware with the goal of us transitioning to a trauma informed medical model where we kind of meet people where they're at. This idea of what happened to you versus what's wrong with you. Um, I think a lot of places, some hospitals, are more about compliance, right? And then if you have a worker that doesn't understand trauma, and you come in, Charles, and you're upset and you're hollering, we may call some sort of code or say the police need to come pull you out of there. Well, what about if you had some sort of trauma in your life where you felt like you had to act out, and when you act out, you got your needs met? So then in your brain, you're like, well, I need to cuss somebody out in order to get something done. No, you don't, but that's been your experience. And so that's kind of what I'm pushing now. Again, I found that article, and it's just was written 3 years ago, and there's very, very little research on CACEs, which is cultural aspect to it. And so I definitely want to delve deeper into that. Will that be for my doctoral? I don't know yet for my capstone, but that will definitely be something that I look into, because I think for me that's this natural progression if I want to have the largest effect and raising two young Black sons in a world that will see them differently when they get to be a little bit older.
How do you envision the future of mental health services and support, particularly in underserved communities?
One of the good things I think that kind of came out of the COVID and us being separated was this enhancement of video, right? So I'm able to kind of meet with you. Everyone has a smartphone, so I can meet with you this way, and hopefully with coverage. Sometimes people don't have coverage, but with some sort of coverage, we can see that expanded in those populations that are underserved. It may be easier for me to get on my phone and talk to you from my living room than to drive downtown to your office. So I hope that a lot of providers kind of get back to that. I know insurance companies have kind of rolled that back a little bit, because now they're saying we can be in person again. But again, what if you have someone who lives way out? I mean, internet is something broadband, they're trying to spread across the country. Once we're all connected, there should be the lowest barrier possible for us to get that mental health care, even if you got to sit on your porch and talk to me. All of my services are virtual again. And so I think that it's possible for you to have a entrepreneurial career, be successful, and connect with those people. So that's the biggest thing, is just keeping that part of insurance and reimbursements, and not limiting that just because we're back in person, which some insurance companies here in Kentucky have lowered those reimbursement rates because we're back in person. But I think that's the greatest thing that we've had. It was very helpful for me, even when, because I was right after SUDS, I was able to kind of do that during COVID when I was working with veterans who were having substance abuse in homeless shelters. So I had a meeting virtually, and they would sit there in the shelter because I couldn't go down there, and they couldn't come to me. So that's been very, very helpful, just bridging the gap. But then again, it's not only just access as far as technological access. There has to be greater access as far as resources. And so
Mhm.
everybody doesn't have insurance, and so um, and Medicaid, Medicare, everyone doesn't have that. So that would be, I think, the greatest thing that could help us and help others kind of stay in care, because you might not have transportation. That may be an issue, but if you got a phone, you could always go to a link like I did just now, and we could be having this conversation just like this.
Yeah, so, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs interested in incorporating mental health advocacy into their ventures?
First, I would say know thyself. So you definitely want to know where your points of contention are, um, especially if you've had a family history of aging. Like I said, we've all had something. Even a divorced parents is an ace, right? So know thyself, and know what your limits are, and know your boundaries. Um, Find someone in the community that is in mental health, maybe a collaboration with a mental health professional. If you're a business that works with older adults, and you want to make sure, as far as maybe maybe it's older adults and they just need care, right? And you'll provide care. Well, if you can collaborate with someone, and make it mutual beneficial or not, it could be pro bono, and get those people who are in their geriatric times some mental health services. So collaboration is going to be the biggest way. Um, Getting into some of these groups, there are a lot of Facebook groups that are dedicated to social work and stuff. So it's going to take some legwork on your part, but connecting. If you got a LinkedIn, connect with people there who are mental health professionals. Learn as much as you can. You don't have to go to school and get all the hours that I got, but you can read a book about trauma informed care, and be trauma informed yourself, meaning that you are meeting people where they're at, right? Empowering them to make the decisions that's best for them. It doesn't always require that formalized training, and that's good, because even while I'm doing the training, everybody is not a provider. Some people are what we call front desk staff, so they don't have a license, but they can still be trauma informed, right? And so dedicate some of your time to learning ways that you can be empathetic and therapeutic to people. And then once it gets beyond your scope of practice, what you know, then you refer, right? But we all could take better care of each other. And that's the biggest thing I can say, is wanting to take care of your fellow man, right? And wanting to be there for them.
Mhm. And so, as an entrepreneur, how do you navigate challenges related to stigma surrounding mental health issues?
Wow. Um, the best thing I think that you could do is address it head on. Um, I came up in a family. I remember hearing, like, we don't tell people our business, right?
Right.
So this is the community that I grew up in Louisville, and it reminds me of a time when I was working in an emergency psychiatric services, where we were dealing with severely mentally ill people who may have had an may have had I can't think of the warrant. There is a warrant that they can get called on them, MIW, and MIW called out on them, and so the police have to come and bring them in for assessment, right? Um, there's a lot of stigma around being diagnosed with, I'm sorry, with schizophrenia, or some of these other medical conditions, and so um, we would have to advocate with the police about how they were handling with people. I mean, everywhere along with how security would sometimes use their techniques to kind of restrain people. I mean, every moment is a chance to kind of speak to these things. When I was in the homeless program, I went to different Salvation Army. I think about right now, went and talked to about what's it like to have both a mental health diagnosis and substance abuse. And so in every moment, we're speaking to educating people about what we know. So the best thing that I can do is educate people, what that looks like, why the response may be that way. What is a better way to respond to that? What are the resources? A lot of people don't know where the resources are. So education ends up being the largest piece, and just addressing it with your clients, saying, hey, people may feel this way because you have been diagnosed with bipolar, but what does that mean for you? Right? So empowering them to decide what that means for them, right? Because we give meaning to everything that happens in our lives.
So tell us, what does your work, the work that you do, what does that mean to you?
Hmm. I guess the easiest way to put that would be that when I was a teenager, again, I go back to the veteran, I learned to be of service, right? In the service, one mission, one goal. One of the things that was heartbreaking to me, and when I got out some 20 years ago, was that I came from a place where everybody was one to a place where there's one of everybody. And so a lot of the work that I do, I feel like if someone can get to a place where they have processed something or that they've had a breakthrough, that I was able to help that person push their life forward and they can no longer be stuck in this place. So again, I said earlier that service to our fellow man is the greatest calling we can have. I really do believe that helping others um, helps me in such a way that um, it's where I get my my feel good from. When I can work with someone and they can kind of get it, and it's probably part of the reason I burned out earlier because I wasn't getting it because people weren't at that place. But to me, it's been my passion since I was in service because I'm too old to serve now. Um, so I would really want to leave that mark. So having a legacy of helping others, being that servant leader, since I learned what servant leadership was, it has been the thing that's kind of guided me and has been my passion. It means the world to me to be able to see people better their lives in times when they thought they couldn't. Um, I can't describe the amount of juice that I get from that. It keeps me going because it's not always easy. Everyone doesn't always get a breakthrough. It could take months of counseling. But that one person said, you know what? I get it. That's good. I'm glad. And it's again back to that. People remember how you made them feel. And so I could be in a way helping little Lafayette who didn't get a chance to talk with people too. So some of that could be mixed in there too. Again, we help others when we help ourselves when we help others. At least that's what I believe.
Hmm. So do you see yourself as being one of the future leaders in your industry?
Yes, yes, and I guess well, yes, I'll say yes. Um, I think I had a fear of having leading people who didn't want to be led early on. Um, but I think this fear kind of dissipated because I don't see a lot of people volunteering to do this, and so it's that calling I said that I have. Like, what is this thing that I know I can do that I keep walking towards that I know will be of significance in some way. Um, so yeah, my hope is that I can be that leader. Now, will that be an out front leader? I mean, I don't imagine I'll be a politician making policies in Washington, but I do think that sometimes um, the leader isn't always at the top. I think every level has leaders, and so I can definitely see myself, having coached kids, having seen them. We did win a championship, having seen them coach them, and they did the work, but I kind of coached them up. I could see myself coaching young boys, helping young boys, trying to get their life together, and then them coming back to me when I'm older than I am now and saying, Mr. Brown, you did this and because you did that. And so, I mean, it warms my heart to think about that that's even a possibility. So I think that may be the place. And even though I didn't think about it in the beginning of my career, that may be where I'm best suited. Is helping our young folk realize that there is a way, another way. And, maybe not a teacher, but definitely in the school, but a teacher of life and how to care for ourselves. So yeah, I definitely feel like I could be a leader in that way.
Well, it's a foregone conclusion for me that I'm already ready to call you Dr. Brown.
I appreciate it. Um, um, there are a couple more assignments and things to be done, but I appreciate that. I think I'll say that Dr. Brown is loading, right? But who I am now is not Dr. Brown. But every day I take a step forward and I grow into whoever Dr. Brown will be. And so I do appreciate that because I am not the man I was 9, 10 years ago, and I'm still becoming the man that I will be sometime from now.
Well, I'm gonna tell you. I think for the things that you do, again, and it parallels so much with what this show is about, which is, the targeting of the underserved communities. And in that targeting, is that not only do I wish for people to see people that look like us, that can do so many different things in so many different industries, and the professionalism goes from all levels, from the top to the bottom,
Mhm.
because we're doing it that way. But I think when they get the opportunity, to see those things, that's where the work that you do, the work that I'm doing, the work that other folk are doing, especially those that have come here to this wonderful show. The showcase is more than just a showcase. What it is it's that informative learning situation that we like to put out to make sure that people understand that nobody does anything alone.
Yes, this is true.
They're never alone, and that there's always somebody here for you, you know. And so, again, as I say, we're connecting those dots. So, as those dots connect, it only gets bigger, it only gets better, it only gets stronger. And, I just really, I've already, I have my mindset now. So, you're just going to be Dr. Brown from now on.
I appreciate that. I will tell you that representation does matter. It really does. And so, you know, having no doctors in my family, it's difficult being a trailblazer. But once we have one,
Mhm.
I think that everyone else will be able to see that it's possible. And
Exactly.
that's all we need is just to be able to see that it's possible, that there is a way. I think we'll get there.
Mhm. And so, just this one other thing before we get to
Yes,
closing. I tell you what, I would love to have is I definitely want you to. I hope you agree to come back to the show
certainly.
another time. But I would also love it if you and maybe 3 or 4 other of the folks that's in the professionals that's in your group.
Mm-hmm.
I would love us to have a round table where we're
Mm.
discussing the main topics of mental health and psychology and what does it mean, and just hitting on some different things, which gives something to think about because, I can get 4 people on the stage at the same time. So that is why I ask.
4 people,
And
including you.
yeah, well,
Okay.
yes, 4 people. Well, no, there's 4 people outside of me.
Okay, so 5 total. Okay,
Yeah.
4 people. I will tell you what. I've already sent you some referrals of people that I know, and
Hmm.
I think that that will be a beautiful thing to see a bunch of us coming together, putting our minds together, and engaging some of these topics that need to be talked about. So,
Mhm.
whatever I can do to bring that to fruition, I will do.
We'll definitely have that discussion. And so, is there anything that you'd like to leave with our audience as to mental health, how to contact you, all those wonderful things in closing?
All right. So, I can be found on LinkedIn. It's Lafayette Brown III. I also can be found on the internet. So Meet Monarch. Type in Meet Monarch, like the butterfly, and type in Lafayette Brown. You'll find my profile. Um, so that's how to contact me. The thing I would like you to take away as far as for mental health is this. Um, each of us need all of us. And so we are all on a journey. Where that journey goes, is different for it's different for each one of us. However, one thing that we all have in common is that the world and the things that kind of happen around us have this effect on us, right? You can call it traumatic, you can call it stressing, you can call it anxiety. But the thing that I want you to do about that is I want you to seriously consider speaking with someone, anyone, whether it's me, whether it's a therapist in your area. Please take the time to know thyself. Because once you know you, right, then everything that you thought was possible, wasn't possible, is possible. You know, faith comes from hearing, right? Right? Not from seeing. So what I see around us is a people that is not connected, that is disjointed. But I have faith. I have faith that over time, as we lean more into each other's, that we could see a day where it isn't just a black Wall Street in one city, in one state, but across America. And it's only at that point when we see each other as humans and see the humanity in each other that we're able to kind of take care of each other. And so your duty though is to take care of yourself. Because if I have pain and I'm bleeding, I'll bleed all over you. So I have to take care of myself. So you take care of you for me, and I'll take care of me for you.
Oh, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we just heard the great Lafayette Brown. I'd like to thank him and each and every last one of you that have watched this show. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, please hit the subscription and notifications button for me, please. Because I like to make sure that each and every episode that we do, that if you're not able to watch it on the live, you're able to come back and you can watch it at any time that you'd like. So again, I'd like to thank each of you for spending your time with us. It's been a wonderful show, and we will do it again tomorrow. Thank you again, Mr. Brown, for being here.
Thank you, Charles, for the opportunity.